Grand Cayman, British West Indies. A tiny dot in the heart of the Caribbean Sea, south of Cuba, west of Jamaica, and east of Mexico, renowned throughout the world for its diving. I first got to know its friendly, easygoing people and the residents of its ocean many years ago when I certified as a diver. Since then, I've been back there often and made many friends there over the years. The island is about 20 miles long and at most a couple of miles wide. It's only in recent years that it has been possible to drive all around the coastline by road. Close inshore, the warm tropical waters of the Caribbean are clear and shallow, whilst outside the protecting reef, the watercolour changes to deep blue, signifying the reef wall dropping off to the depths below. When I first came here, the airport terminal consisted of just a corrugated iron shed. Now the islanders are proud of their new international airport, visited regularly by jets from the mainland USA. Cruise ships call regularly at Georgetown, the island's capital, disgorging their passengers for a fleeting glimpse of the island's underwater treasures. Over the years, I've got to know many of the hidden secrets of Grand Cayman, but many more still remain to be discovered. I'd now like to take you to meet my friends, both above and below the water, to explore some of the secret places that I have discovered there, and to meet some of the incredible creatures living there. Just a few hundred yards from our beachfront apartment are the coral gardens that fringe the shoreline. The island is in fact built on the summit of a massive undersea mountain, rising from the depths of the Cayman Trench some 25,000 feet below, the deepest point in the Caribbean Sea, and one of the deepest trenches in the whole of the Atlantic Ocean. The sheer wall of the mountain rises to just below sea level. Over millions of years, tiny corals have lived and died on its summit, each building on the skeletons of the previous generation, until an island platform emerged from the sea. A flat island of scrub and mangrove swamps, whose highest point is less than 50 feet above sea level. The ocean surrounding it is filled with some of the richest sea life found in the world. Everything you see underwater is not a rock nor a plant. They're animals, colonies of millions of tiny animals, making up the soft and hard corals that cover the seabed, and among which live the wealth and variety of sea life, which is the richness and wealth of the Cayman Islands themselves. Hundreds of different species of fish thrive in these warm, clear tropical waters. Rarely found outside Cayman waters, the curious white spot filefish is common among the corals of the islands. The yellow stingray, growing to no more than 15 inches in diameter, has adapted to live in the sandy patches among the corals. A large grouper slowly glides past, and even here at 60 feet, natural sunlight reveals a diversity of colours and textures of the corals of the reef. A small shoal of plankton-feeding blue chromis dart among the swaying sea plumes, soft corals which can grow to 2 meters in height. In the shadow of the reef, a grey angelfish grazes on the coral bed, and on an outcrop of brain coral, a four-eyed butterfly fish confuses would-be predators with its unusual markings, creating the illusion of swimming backwards. With its beak-like mouth and bright colours, the parrotfish is suitably named. Whilst in a nearby gully, broad-striped gobies clean the parasites from a large solitary grouper. Other fish inhabit the reef in shoals. The distinctive shape and yellow tails of the schoolmasters. Blue tang pour over the elkhorn coral. Striped grunt flow past a large head of pitted coral. Once known as the Island of the Turtles, Grand Cayman still retains the turtle as its national emblem. Formerly hunted for its meat, the turtle is now protected and re-establishing itself, and is an increasingly common and beautiful sight underwater. Whilst in the fine white coral sand is another of nature's oddities, a colony of garden eels, moving in graceful, wave-like motions, catching drifting plankton. Reaching almost 2 feet in length, they retreat into the safety of their burrows at the first sight of a predator. Everything that you have just seen was filmed in less than an hour on one single dive, exploring a small area of coral within swimming distance of the beach. To fully appreciate the reef and its structure, you need to see it from the air. So to identify possible new dive spots to explore, Glenn and I decided to charter a small light aircraft for a couple of hours. The barrier reef that gives the island its protection has also been the graveyard of ships over the centuries, and the Cayman Islands are surrounded by hundreds of wrecks under the ocean, on the shore, and on the reef. Clearly visible from the air are the remains of the freighter Ridgefield, driven up onto the reef in a hurricane in 1958. Over the years, she has been beaten to pieces by the power of the sea. Local dive master Siebert gives us a closer view of the wreck.
See in the front right there, a section of piece of coral up laying right down the bottom. Yeah. That's part of the bow with the name on it. The name is Ridgefield. That's part of the bow.
I see it. It says Ridgefield, yeah.
This happened about 2 years ago that she finally got busted up like this in a hurricane. Again, but smashed her up real bad.
The Ridgefield went aground where 2 previous ships had already foundered, and frigate birds perch on the remains of the bow section of a now long-forgotten sailing ship. On the shore by Georgetown lies another wreck. And on the opposite side of the island, the ocean floor is strewn with the remains of ships that have met their deaths here over the centuries. Tide movement in the inner Caribbean is negligible, and so our boat could always be left overnight pulled a few feet up the beach outside our apartment. This enabled us to get an early start for our first dive of the day before breakfast on one of Grand Cayman's most popular wrecks, the Oro Verde. The wreck lies in 60 feet of water about half a mile off 7 Mile Beach. We decided to dive on the wreck early in the morning to have the wreck to ourselves before the daily arrival of chartered diving boats. It is just before 8 a.m. as we prepared to dive. The air temperature is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and the water temperature 78 degrees. In Spanish, Oro Verde means green gold, and that was the cargo she carried, a hold full of marijuana, en route from Central America to Miami, when she was hit by a sudden storm and driven onto the reef.
Okay. Yeah.
Abandoned by captain and crew, she was eventually purchased by the Cayman Islands Water Sports Association for $1 and towed by them into the bay as her final resting place and to provide a safe and interesting wreck dive for visiting divers. Repeated hurricanes have continued to shift her along the ocean floor and to break her up, but she still lies substantially intact. And on a wreck visited daily by divers, fish now await man's visit in the hope of food. The wreck has its own varied resident population of fish, and shoals of the ever-present and avaricious yellowtails greet Glenn as he sinks slowly to the ocean floor near the wreck, mobbing him, seeking the food they have come to expect from visiting humans. As the Oro Verde has been shifted by hurricanes several hundred yards from where she first sank, she has broken up, but the stern section is still virtually intact and ideal for exploration. Careful not to stir up silt, Glenn explores the gloomy interior of the wreck, floating along her corridors and through her cabins. Where steel plates have been torn from her sides, fish now come and go, and she provides a home for many varieties of fish who shelter in the relative safety of her cabins and her corridors. From a porthole where sailors once watched the oceans passing by, I now watch Glenn reunited with his followers. This is an underwater photographer's paradise, and the fish are willing subjects. Sometimes often too willing and enthusiastic, as I learnt whilst trying to get a shot of this friendly Nassau grouper patiently posing for me. More commonly companioned to shark, a remora attaches itself to the gills of this solitary jack. Too quickly, Glenn tells me that our time on the wreck is almost up. 50 minutes of bottom time have already gone. And as we leave the wreck for our breakfast, the fish are also ready for theirs. A shoal of large jack circle us. A small group of tomtates feed off the algae covering the wreck, as does an angelfish. Solitary blue tang, a hogfish accompanied by a small bluehead wrasse, a trumpet fish also glides through the wreckage in search of food. A French angelfish grazes on the wreck, unconcerned by the camera and our presence. Great barracuda, the king of the wreck, accompanied by his courtiers, observes our visit to his undersea home. The dark patches on him are clusters of sea lice accumulated during his long life in these waters. We surface and think how incredible it is that a few hundred yards away, the business people of Georgetown are driving to their offices and their banks, whilst we enjoy the rich kaleidoscope of underwater life literally on their doorsteps. The sun does not always shine on Grand Cayman. And on a stormy day, the island's most famous wreck sank, just below where this cruise ship now lies at anchor. The only way to visit this wreck is by submarine. Anchored off Georgetown Harbour, she was lost in a hurricane, and when divers went out to search for the remains, all they found was the anchor chain leading down over the wall towards the Cayman Trench deep below. She was thought lost forever until rediscovered by a mini-submarine in 1987, having tumbled down the coral wall until she caught on a pillar of coral. And now the Kirk Pride lies, intact, a ghostly 800 feet below sea level. No current, nothing moves to disturb her at this depth. Troy, the captain of the submersible, now takes over the story.
The wreck of the Kirk Pride was found in 1986 by a pilot, Stuart Mailer of Research Submersibles Limited. The ship's home port was Bluefield, Nicaragua. The ship has been lost for 14 years. She went down in 1976 in a winter storm that we call a nor'wester. Chase, this is PC 1203. Our present depth is 800 feet, 800 feet on the wreck. Let's now move in a little closer, see what type of marine life we can find on the ship. A number of deep water corals, white corals, we call porcelain corals. The orange material that we're seeing today is rust, as it slowly drips off of the ship's railings. Very little oxygen in the water, therefore the rusting is occurring very slowly. See the ship's telegraph lying on the floor, just inside the doorway. Finding a ship like this below divers' depths and all the portholes still intact, as well as the telegraph, the ship's bell. Okay. So, maybe one shot on one of the hatches back here.
In the hold, an old VW convertible, still recognisable and lying on its side. The car's owner, who arranged for it to be shipped out to the island, has actually been down in the submarine to see his car. This is the mound of coral that halted her slide down the sheer wall, her bows securely wedged, but her stern hanging precariously out over the abyss, many thousands of feet below.
All of the ropes are still floating. Polypropylene, or made to float, still floating 14 years after the ship's gone down.
In the dark ocean depths, on the coral stacks that hold the Kirk Pride in place, a family of strange creatures, until now known only to science by fossils, having been thought extinct many millions of years ago. Crinoids are in fact animals, growing up to 18 inches in height, and feeding by filtering materials that drop from the rich waters above. Animals, not plants, they breed, feed, and move around the coral surrounding the wreck. This is the only place in the world that these creatures have been found, and still scientists know little more of them than can be observed from the submarine.
Chase, 1203, comms check.
Bottom time completed, the sub's ballast tanks are gradually filled with compressed air, and we gently rise up the coral wall from the grey twilight of the abyss to the sunlight above. In the depths, the wall is sparsely populated, but as we rise, more and more life becomes apparent. As we reach 300 feet, we come into the zone of the giant sponges and corals.
Roger that. We're at the sand ridge. We'll be up in about 10 to 12 minutes.
And as we rise up towards the surface, the more familiar fish and corals of the upper reef become increasingly abundant.
Okay, we're about 40 feet.
To find the magic of Cayman, you need local knowledge, and Roydell, our friend and guide, introduces us to the real island, away from the hotels and tourist beaches. As we drive around the island, Roydell points out to us some of the many dive sites accessible from the shore. The town of East End retains all the charm of the old Caribbean. Here, the reef comes close to the shore, and Roydell points to a spot where he plans to take us diving the next day. Diving finished for the day, we call in at one of the many waterside bars and cool off with a beer. The locals are friendly, and we feel more at home here than in the clean concrete hotels on the west end of the island. Next day, we meet Roydell early to plan our dive to one of the island's most incredible underwater phenomena. On an unmarked reef off the east end of the island, we went in search of the elusive shoals of baitfish. Shoals of millions of tiny fish. Conditions are perfect, and Roydell has this morning been told by a local fisherman of a large shoal of tarpon feeding in the vicinity. So we dive on the mark he has given us. We start our search through the maze of caves and caverns, honeycombing the coral in this area. Soon, we come across our first tarpon, and we know we must be getting close. Seeking protection in the caves, the baitfish are preyed upon by the hungry tarpon, game fish that can grow up to 8 feet in length and graze on the seemingly limitless shoals of baitfish. Find the tarpon and the baitfish will not be far away. As we swim into the next gully, we encounter a group of over 20 large tarpon who guide us to a cave entrance where a ghostly shape shimmers and pulsates in the sunlight. These shoals contain up to 10 different species of similar fish that are virtually impossible to distinguish from one another underwater, including silversides, herring, anchovies, and scad. Densely packed, their shoals drift and flow in the caves and deep-cut canyons of the sheltered areas of the reef. The shoals part, flow, and contour around divers as they pass through them, blocking out the sunlight in a living silvery fog. What appears to be a narrow tunnel turns and opens out into a spectacular underwater chamber filled with fish, the camera light turning those closest into a golden rain, whilst those more distant shine a silvery blue. Daylight filters down to us from the surface 60 feet above, as a blizzard of fish swirls in the half-light of the caves. In the confines of the cavern, the tarpon come close, attracted by our light. The tarpon who led us to this incredible place now take us back to reality. We ascend slowly and quietly, totally mesmerized by our experience, as if waking from a dream. Grand Cayman's most famous family lives on a sandbar just inside the reef. From the air, at 500 feet, they are clearly visible. A family of up to 20 southern stingrays, growing to as much as 6 feet across, who look on man not as a predator, nor as an enemy, but as a friend. In the shallow, sunlit waters of the sandbar, we feel as if we are swimming in a gigantic aquarium. The stingrays now associate humans with food, as do moray eels, and we tried to coax this one to come all the way out of his lair. Other fish circle, waiting for tidbits, but the stingrays have no manners and push to the front of the queue. By nature, the stingray is a shy, retiring creature, avoiding contact with man, and their friendly behaviour here on Grand Cayman makes them unique throughout the world. Despite their reputation, it is very rare that a stingray attacks a human being, and will only use its sting as a defence if provoked. The rays are very gentle, and here I literally pop a piece of squid right into its mouth. Glenn, meanwhile, is dancing with an over-friendly ray who just won't take no for an answer. There are now over 20 rays around us. This one has lost its tail, probably to a hungry shark, but still seems to swim well without it. And a lucky sight, a large eagle ray, almost 10 feet from nose to tip of tail, glides by effortlessly, like a large bird flying into the distance. As we moor the boat for the last time, it's hard to leave the underwater paradise of this island and return to the real world. It's easy now to understand the proud boast of the Cayman Islanders, that their waters offer some of the greatest diving in the world.